Hello, good afternoon, good evening, and good morning somewhere out there in the world. Happy Saturday to you all. I apologize if you hear any sound in the background, but I think there is a siren being played outside my studio here. And I don't know what that actually means, but it could be just a drill. Anyway, thank you for joining us on this beautiful Saturday morning, afternoon, wherever you are watching from. This is Real Talk with E.V.E. And after giving it much thought and as many projects that I am working on currently, I will only be airing this show on Saturdays at noon, and that is to do some lunch and learn. So won't be airing on Wednesdays unless brought back by popular demand. For now, it will be only Saturdays at noon Central Standard Time because I am working on some projects as we speak, and it sometimes takes up a lot of evening time or morning time or weekend time. So hope you guys understand, but we are in the lunch and learn segment today, and I have a wonderful guest that is waiting to be brought up. Once again, I thank you, my lovely audience. Feel free to comment. We are live. And then if we can respond for any question you may have, we will do it on the spot. If not, it will be after this show. You know, this is a half-hour show, but sometimes the conversation is so interesting and so good that we go over a bit of our time, which is okay. This is Real Talk with EVE. Without further ado, I want to bring up my wonderful guest, and that's Jody McPhearson. And I want to say, welcome. Good afternoon. How are you?
I am doing splendid. Thanks for having me on the show today, Eve.
Wonderful. It's my pleasure to bring you. I know it's been several years since we've spoken, since I've brought you on actually on Nuestra Comunidad NWI radio show. And of course, you guys don't know, every Friday at 5 p.m., every Saturday at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. It is a 1 hour talk show. It is the only bilingual talk show of its kind. Been there going on 13 years. I don't know how much longer I will be there because I am moving on to different things. And of course, it has nothing to do with the show or the radio or my co host. God bless him for staying on that long, for us being on that long, right? So, but this is Real Talk with EVE. We're expanding this worldwide. Whoever watches and listens, hopefully you get to take a nugget out of today's show. And we have, once again, Jody McPhearson. Thank you for making some time coming on this show today. And I know that you too have a busy schedule.
Some days are busier than others.
Right. But sometimes when we are entrepreneurs or self employed, we tend to have a little more flexibility in some cases, right?
Yes.
Um, if you can speak up just a little louder, just so I can hear you better, that would be awesome. We
Yes,
are live.
absolutely.
Awesome. We are live for our LinkedIners, LinkedIn people, family. Hello there on Facebook, my Twitch TV viewers as well. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we want to say hello to our YouTubers. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Eve Gomez. And I love increase so that our audience can see who our guest is, can see the value of the show and the things that you can learn from. I've always believed in never stop learning. Leaders never stop learning. And so there's always something new to learn out of every show. Now, everybody's probably wondering, well, who is Jody McPhearson? Jody, tell us a little bit about you. Who are you? Who's Jody McPhearson?
That's a great question. It's always interesting to have to explain yourself. I am, I'm a child of God first and foremost. I'm a many things, I suppose. I'm a father and a husband. And professionally, I've worn a lot of titles, but my purpose and my assignment is to create inclusive spaces. So that's where I hang my hat. I wear some titles for different organizations where I work as an education and DEI consultant for both schools and corporations, and trying to find opportunities where people can feel valued. really kind of my day-to-day mission in all areas. If I can do that, then I think I've had a pretty good day.
And it is all up to us to have that kind of day, right?
Yes.
And in you bringing, I believe, a gift that you have in you, someone else can have a good day.
That's a
That's
great
how
way to look at it. Yeah,
that's how
that's a
I
great
see
way to
it.
look at it.
It's all about what do we have in us to share with someone else?
Yeah,
What experience have we gone through for someone else to learn from, right?
I
Um,
think that's the reason we go through those experiences, Eve. I think it's never really about us. It feels like it's about us a lot of times, but oftentimes it isn't. It's so that you can go forward and help somebody else get through it.
that's right. That's right. And people ask, well, why me? Why is this going? Why am I going through this? Why is this happening to me? Why ask why? Sit tight. You'll find out why eventually and saying, oh, it wasn't really ever about me. It's about what I got out of this to show someone else, to teach someone else that they don't have to go through it like I did, you know?
Yeah, I heard an expression that oftentimes when we're going through things, um, it is easy for us to focus on the door that's closing. That oftentimes we miss the door that's opening.
That is so true. We're so concerned about what somebody isn't doing for us instead of being concerned of what is in right in front of us to say, let's come on in, let's walk into that door. Because as that cliche says, when one door closes, another one opens, right? Well, that
Yes,
is
it
actually
does.
true. That is actually true. Now, there's something that sticks out of you, Jody, and you have an extensive background. First of all, I want to thank you for serving in the military. Thank you for serving our country. Um, well noted and much respect to you and all those that have served in the military, one field or another, one branch or another. And give credit where credit is due, right?
Thank you so much for that, Eve. I appreciate it.
You're quite welcome. So, what has happened in your life to get you where you are today? I know that your life hasn't been a bed of roses. Let's talk. Let's real talk. Let's get some real talk here for
Real
our
talk. I grew up in Chicago, so I grew up in the west side of the city.
West Side, as they say.
A lot of people say it's the gutter, and I'm okay with that. I can own coming from the hood because it made me bilingual. I don't speak Spanish, but I speak hood, and so I think it allowed me to get to places where I could be. I think growing up, and if I look over my entire life, the common thing is not being included in spaces where I knew I belonged, where I knew I had the talent for on sports or at work. I had, and not being included allowed me to get to a space where, you know what, I'm a creator, right? From the creator. So I have the capacity to create spaces where I can include others. I don't have to wait for somebody to ask me to sit at their table. We're going to build tables and invite people to come sit with us and make it the way it should be. So that's really my driving force is I remember, I'm like Jordan. I remember when I didn't get picked for the team. I remember every time I was looked over and I know what that feels like. And so I want to make sure that young people, young adults coming up behind us don't have to dwell in that space just because.
Wow. And you know what it feels like. You know how you felt at that moment that you were not included. Tell us about that.
It is painful to experience, I think, and I think for our young people, it's probably a little traumatizing. I grew up in a space where my parents didn't really hope for all the things that I think our kids hope for. It wasn't looked at. There's a struggle, I think, when people say come to work as your authentic self, when our parents were taught not to be their authentic self, to assimilate. I think companies want you to change when you come into them. They say come as you are, but they want you to assimilate before you're accepted. And at the same time telling you to be yourself. Well, that doesn't work. So that pain stings when you actually do show up and reveal who you are. It's like being rejected on the playground, you know. So it's a recurring pain that I think people feel and they suppress it to get along.
And with that, something struck in you and says, I got to change this.
It was church. Church is where I really discovered it. As a youth pastor, I had a group of young adults, and this is when the youth ministry had began to branch off, and it was in a different building, and they spent a lot of time with me and knowing me and hearing from me, but never hearing from the shepherd of the house. And so there was a disconnect, and they didn't feel included in the big church. And so I just began to see my pain in them. And as we talked through it, um, the pastor blessed me with being able to facilitate how to integrate these two buildings into one body. And so we began to do work in the big church, and the young people started to do programming, and they did photography and the website and all these technical things that the old church didn't know how to do. And soon they became part of the church. They knew the pastor's voice, and I think that turned things for me, because if we can do it in God's house, I think we could do it everywhere. So I think that was the point. He revealed it to me. So now that's the goal, to keep doing it everywhere else.
Wow, that's powerful, especially when you saw what was being revealed right there before your eyes. Because a lot of people don't see what they don't see, right? And they don't know what they don't know. And obviously, God gave you those spiritual eyes, those eyes to see, so that you're able to see that and be transparent about it. And the more we share our experiences with others, I believe the more we can help others heal, come to life, realize their worth, right? And speaking of hearing and come to realize to know their worth, I like the fact that you work with the youth. That's something we have in common. And you have a heart for the youth. Tell us about that.
I do. I think that young people have capacity to help us in so many ways and to share. But most successful people, all the ones that I've met, I wish I had done a study, but most of them have had the same three things: knowledge, support, and opportunity. And so if you don't even know something exists, right, you're already behind everybody else. And so in looking at that, how do we just make them aware of opportunities was the so just talking to them and letting them know, hey, here's this opportunity, and then preparing them through it, and then finding support as they journey along the way. I think that became a big piece of how what I want to do in those spaces, because young people struggle with so much more today than we could ever have imagined.
That is so
And
true.
it's hard to get them to open up if they don't trust you.
That is so true. And that is key. Many of our youth don't know who to trust.
Mm,
So, how have
mm.
you made that transition where you've gained their trust? What have you had to do? Because I know what that struggle is like to get them to trust you.
Honesty, real, raw honesty that's not pretty, and every every adult wouldn't approve of, but it's honesty, because people need to hear in their language the things that they're going through. It can't be this high and mighty and I'm better than you and looking down on you. You just kind of get down on your knees at the level that they are, and you have those conversations. One of the, I think I mentioned in my TED talk, we struggle because the church's big challenge was trying to clean a fish before they caught it. It's impossible, right? You have to catch the fish and then clean it. So versus yelling at the kid and saying you're not dressed properly to come into this place, let them in the place, and the atmosphere should change them by those who are mentoring and caring and nurturing them. And we're at the same struggle even in corporate places. I often go to work in the same hoodie, right? Because I need them to see me as I am, because then they'll see the people I represent as they are. And a lot of times that gets lost, because you come and you go, wait a minute, I didn't expect this. Who is this guy?
Right.
But the work, you put in the work, and then they know.
And so you're wearing that hoodie to say, I'm being inclusive, right? And I think that's a key word that people can take it into different meanings and not really show what true inclusive or inclusivity is about. That's something that you're dealing with. That's something that you're creating. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. We've created a company, Inclusive Spaces, that's designed to really live out that word inclusion. We want to create environments where people feel respected and valued, supported for who they are, what their opinions and ideas are, versus having them assimilate to what we need, because diversity is a given. So I think that conversation has to move forward. We've been talking about diversity, since 2020. Everybody's like, oh, we need to be more diverse, but diversity is really opportunity. If there is a city with a neighborhood that has good housing and good schools and job opportunities, you're going to see a lot of people come because it's the opportunity. If there's a, you can go to, you can go to Dollar Tree and you'll see a diverse crowd. So if your company isn't doing more than Dollar Tree, you're not doing much. The inclusion is the space I think where we're missing it, and we have to offer people to come along and offer them to use their talents. There's a great vineyard, a warehouse, where they have employees write their own review after a year, and they can sell it to everybody else. They get to do that job, but the spirit behind it is they get to say, hey, here's my talents and gifts that I could offer to the team. And so they offer these people to come in and be included in growing. They have a 99% retention rate. I think that's phenomenal. So I think inclusion is about us letting people have their voice in their place and be a part of what we're trying to accomplish, and we'll get there faster.
Yeah, and as we had a sidebar conversation the other day about inclusion, diversity and inclusion, I'm all about a diverse atmosphere, environment. And I believe the true experience, my first true experience that I had about diversity was in my high school years. I went to a private high school out here in
Mm.
Northwest Indiana, and I engaged, but I embraced it. I embraced the diversity where I saw, as I always say, the first encounter of the third kind, like that movie. And all jokes aside, it was for me, it was something new. First of all, I come from another country and I moved into Gary. We were diverse, but it was mostly Black and Latinos.
Yeah.
Few Greeks, few Serbians, right? But there we had from Filipinos, from India, from Germany, from Russia, from Puerto Rico, from Mexican, Polish. I mean, we had the whole world in our hands right there in that school, and I loved it and I embraced it. And I said, "Is this what true diversity means?" And when we were all engaged in something in the class or in an event, is this what inclusion means, and this what it looks like?
I love that. I think that for me, high school was my first exposure to diversity, but the military was my first exposure to inclusion. Because in the military, it didn't matter where you came from, it didn't
Mm.
matter your age, it didn't matter your race, it didn't matter your preferences. Because when you are counting on somebody for your livelihood and your life, it makes a tremendous difference. And so I think I experienced it there, and that's what molded it, that I knew what it could look like, I knew what it could feel like. So I appreciate that time in my life. It taught me a ton.
So, what difference do you see in other entities saying about diversity and inclusion versus what you bring? And obviously, those that are just watching, just joining us, thank you for joining us here at Real Talk with E.V.E. I have a TEDx speaker, Jody McPhearson, but he's also an educator. I call me as an educator by default because I don't have an education degree, but I'm involved with the youth. I'm involved with education and helping improve the quality of it. Here you are as a speaker, a TEDx speaker, also bringing in different workshops, seminars, webinars, what have you, to the youth, but also adults. What's the difference for what some people put out there as diversity inclusion with what you're bringing in as inclusion?
Well, first of all, I think we have DEI mixed up, and so I don't focus on DEI, and I understand why, because it's hard to put DIE, because nobody wants to die, and that is what has to happen in this space. Something has to die, and
Mm.
culture has to die. The old folks who are doing things a certain way, that has to die. That has to go away in order for you to truly be inclusive and have equity. You've got to get rid of some of the past. So we focus on a framework that I have researched for a long time and tested and proven to be true. And it is from my TED talk. It is the framework is the basis of that talk. It's belong, believe, begin. And so a lot of companies want people to come in and go, oh, this company is great. I want to work for them. But that's not how people come in the front door, right? They come in the front door. They've got to figure that out for themselves. You got to accept them as they are without changing, without cleaning them. And that's risky for people as human nature doesn't say, oh, this is going to work out. Our human nature is that we are going to be a little hesitant to allow new people in our circle, our inner circle, and it's the same at work. So I try to go into the space and evaluate what has worked in the past and really look at a holistic approach of what's the culture, right? It doesn't matter if you have a diverse staff. I want to know what the culture is like because the culture speaks volume. Because if you don't even provide an equal opportunity to come into the front door, you're never going to get to the second part. Whether you think it's equity or it's inclusion, you're never going to get there because you're not welcoming to everyone to come in the front door. The opportunity is not equal.
Mm, that is so true. We often talk about it, but not really be about it, right? And there's got to be some follow up, as we were talking about this the other day. There's got to be follow up to know, are these people feeling inclusive, right?
It is. It
That's
does.
the thing.
I
Um,
think it's if we looked at business and schools like sports teams, we'd be different because sports teams, after a couple of years, you get rid of the coach. You go, oh, that didn't work out. We're going to get rid of the coach, and we're going to get rid of the offensive coach, the defensive coach, wide receivers, linebacker. They all got to go because they didn't do the job. But in companies, we let the people in charge of the culture stay in place regardless. But as long as they're turning a profit, they can stay there. And so the two missions are colliding and they're fighting each other because one is just make money and the other is, hey, we're going to move towards this place where we can be more inclusive. And the truth is, if we get there quicker, you make more money because you represent the communities you serve. You represent the people you're trying to reach. And I don't know why that doesn't click for people, but I find it interesting when I look at sports that way and they go, nope, these ones, they were in charge of the culture. They have to go. And in business and schools, we let the principals and CEOs just sit in place with no consequences.
wow, and that's huge. I love that DIE. I don't think anyone has ever put it that way. I like that, Jody. You need to make sure you trademark that or copyright that.
I'm gonna have to do it today. We worldwide now.
Yes. And so Jody brings something different to the table, guys. And I met Jody McPhearson through social media. And I brought him on the radio a couple of years ago, pre-pandemic, if I'm not mistaken. And
Mhm.
so I see that he's a mover and a shaker, and I appreciate the movers and the shakers. There's a lot of people just moving, but not shaking, not bringing the action behind what we talk about. Action speaks volume. We can talk all day long, but does our action speak louder than our words? And so, Jody, you're doing something new. You're bringing something new. Tell us a little bit about that.
So I am working through the space where I am really trying to live out inclusive spaces in all areas of my life. I want my work and my home and my play all to be that inviting space. And so through that, we created inclusive spaces as an opportunity to consult with schools and organizations to move them forward in that process of inclusion and equity. And so
Okay.
it's been received really, really well in this space. And I'm looking forward to consulting with more schools. I've got some elementary schools on tap for the fall because a lot of them have um, competing organizations that are telling them what their culture is. There's one doing anti-bullying, one doing leadership, one doing development, and so there are all these different voices, and so there's not one vision for who they are. And I think companies are like that too because they're bargain shopping for the
Right.
work, and it's short-term commitment versus it's a long-term overhaul to change a
Right.
culture. It's a long-term. If you were to say, "Hey, I'm gonna change my personality and wardrobe," you can't just do it in a day, right? You got to over a period of time, get the right pieces and the right walk and the right talk and some etiquette classes. And so companies don't realize that often because they're like, hey, we're going to hire somebody and get through this news cycle and we'll be okay. And so we want to be with them holistically from the beginning and ground up and say, what's working? What are your different pieces? And the schools have been really good about opening the doors and showing us and say, hey, here's the moving parts and how do we make them cohesive?
Oh, that's awesome. And one key word that we're lacking worldwide, especially here in America, is etiquette.
Etiquette.
People don't give the common courtesy, don't have the etiquette. We're not teaching our kids to say, excuse me, please, thank you, may I? It's all, huh? I ain't. We have to teach our kids for success, not teach them for failure. Failure is not a bad thing, people. Jody can agree with me. Failure is not a bad thing as long as you're not afraid of it. And failure to me is not getting up when you fall. That is failure. So don't be afraid to fall so long as you get right back up. And being inclusive and feeling that you are inclusive, as I also felt not being included in certain things because my English wasn't the greatest. I was still a little girl. I was learning from the currency, from the culture, and you mentioned the culture. We got to get rid of what is the culture, what is the norm, what is it like to be an American, what is it like to be Mexican, what is it like to be African, what is it like to be Polish, how about what is it like to be human?
Amen. What is it like to be human? That is it.
What is it like to be human? And according to what? According to whom? The new normal, the normal according to who? Society? Society can dictate destruction and you not even know
Mm,
it.
mm.
Thank you,
You
Lord.
said something there.
Society can lead you to destruction. And I will
Wow.
not allow society to dictate to me. So we got to teach our kids not to allow it also, but to help teach them to think for themselves.
I think we
It's
have to, yeah, I think you're right. I think we have to focus on not leading from a place of fear. I think that is the space where the world is a scary place, and sometimes we get in a spot where we're leading from a place of fear, and we have to lead
Mhm,
from a
mhm.
place of strength. And that strength is not ours. So we get distracted because we're relying on our own strength when that's not the answer. So if we were to get to the right place where we know where our strength comes from and just focus on that, we
Come
could
on.
truly make the change in a very short time.
You said the key word, where it's coming from, right? That's where we need to identify where that is coming from. And wow, time flies when you're having fun. We just have another minute or so. Anything you want to share here with our audience? The website down there to reach out to Jody, um,
You know,
jodyspeakslive.com. And when you hear the word Jody or the name Jody, most times, let's keep it real. This is real talk. They think it's a woman,
yeah,
Jody,
it is.
right?
So
This is
the
a man.
expectation, yeah, the
Oh, for
expectation
real.
is different, but I
Exactly.
appreciate. First, I just want to once again thank you for having me on. I appreciate that and the opportunity to spend time with you always. It's been great. I would leave people with the thought that each person can do a little bit to be more inclusive. Uh, I'm telling my boys when they see someone in school sitting by themselves, just invite them, right? Just invite them in. And if you invite people to your space, you're doing your part little by little. I don't think we need to walk a mile in somebody else's shoes. I think we need to walk a mile with somebody and
That is
know
so
what
different.
they're going through and be able to experience it. And then you'll have true empathy. Walking a mile in their shoes is just going to say, oh, their shoes are uncomfortable. I don't want to do that. And you can put it away. But you walk a while with them and see their hurt and see the pain and see the struggle, it changes you and you
Mm,
can't go back to unseeing it. So
that's
that would be my advice for people to start to walk through life together. Parents are in the same sports, in the same schools, and they rarely talk, right? At work, you work 40, 50 hours together and you rarely talk. Spend time with each other. Be intentional. Be
mm,
intentional.
yeah. That's good. That's good, Jody. That's a good word for the day, guys, here. I hope that you've learned something. I took a nugget or two from this. Leaders never stop learning, and we too take notes when the speaker is speaking. And speaking of speaker, he is a TEDx speaker. Look him up. Go on to YouTube. Put jodyspeakslife.com to his website. I'm sure it can lead you to his YouTube as well. He is a TEDx speaker, and he talks about inclusive in a different way. So if you want to learn more about him, go to his website, reach out to him. He is for hire if you want him in your school, because we can never have enough leaders come to our school. It does take a village to raise a child, and parents step up to the plate and learn as well. Because I can't say, I can't say enough how much parents take for granted and not step up to the plate and be held accountable and responsible for your own child. It takes all of us to come together to help your child become successful, and not lead them for failure, but lead them to success. Thank you so much, Jody. I appreciate you coming on. This won't be the first or last, or first but not last, here on Real Talk with EVE. Until next time, guys, thank you for joining us here on Real Talk with EVE. We'll come back next Saturday at noon for more lunch and learn. This was great. This was great.
Thank you.
Jody, I'll be back with you soon. Thank you so much for
Absolutely.
coming on.
Peace.
Wow, that was something. And I really hope that you guys take a nugget out of all this. And I appreciate you watching. I hope that you share this video with others so that others can learn and listen. And maybe something that he said may strike a chord and say, "Oh, I needed to hear this." On that note, got to go. Got places to go, people to see. And it's just been great to be here with you all. Thanks so much. Until next time. Bye now. Se les quiere. Peace.